Ethan Cross had never imagined that stepping into a hall full of aliens would feel like stepping into history itself. The chamber was enormous, built from white stone that glowed softly as if it held the light of stars inside its walls. Pillars, curved upward like the roots of giant trees, and every surface shimmered faintly with symbols that pulsed in slow rhythm. This was the Galactic Council Hall, the heart of diplomacy for more than 100 civilizations. And here, for the first time in recorded history, a human was allowed inside. Ethan tugged at his dark uniform, wishing he could vanish into the floor. He was only an observer, sent by Earth to listen, watch, and maybe shake a few hands. Humans had entered space much later than most species, and compared to them, Earth was still small, weak, and poor. No one expected him to speak. No one even cared that he was here. All around him, the chamber overflowed with strange life. Giant insectoids with glittering wings spoke in clicks and whistles. Tall reptilian figures with golden armor hissed softly at one another. Small, fur-covered creatures darted between the legs of diplomats carrying tablets and messages. Every species had their place, their power, and their history. Humans had none of that. Ethan felt it with every sideways glance that brushed past him, dismissing him as unimportant. He sighed and tried to steady his nerves. Just listen. Just observe. Don't embarrass Earth. That was his mission. But deep inside, he felt the crushing weight of insignificance. He was one man surrounded by giants. Then he saw her. Across the chamber stood a group of tall warriors dressed in ceremonial black and crimson. Their armor gleamed like polished stone, and their presence filled the air with pressure, as if gravity itself bowed to them. These were the Veyari, one of the oldest and proudest warrior races in the galaxy. They valued strength, honor, and tradition above all things. Few dared to meet their gaze, and at their center stood Princess Kelaira. Her skin was a pale silver, tone that caught the light like moonlit water. Her eyes glowed faintly blue, sharp as blades and impossible to ignore. She wore no helmet, unlike her companions, and her long dark hair fell over her shoulders like a river of midnight. She looked young, but every movement carried the weight of a queen in waiting. Where others looked with disdain, she looked with challenge, as if daring the universe itself to deny her. Ethan tried not to stare, but her eyes moved and locked on him. For a heartbeat, Ethan froze. Her gaze pierced him, strong and unblinking. He looked away quickly, his cheeks warming. Don't draw attention, don't do anything stupid. He forced himself to study the floor, the glowing walls, the gathering of alien leaders. Anything but her. But when he risked a glance again, she was still watching him. Whispers rose among her people. The Veyari warriors exchanged puzzled looks. Why was their princess staring at a human? Humans were barely recognized as a race worth mentioning. For a Veyari princess to notice one at all was strange. For her to keep staring was unthinkable. Ethan swallowed. He wanted to disappear. He wanted to hide behind a pillar and wait until the council ended. But he could not move. Something in her eyes pinned him where he stood. Then it happened. The chamber quieted as the Veyari delegation stepped forward. Their king, broad-shouldered and clad in heavy ceremonial armor, began to speak to the council. His voice thundered, like drums, deep and commanding. He spoke of alliances, of strength, of the Veyari's role in protecting the galaxy. Every word echoed through the hall with authority. But in the middle of his speech, Kelaira moved. She walked past her guards, her steps sharp and sure. Her armor glimmered with silver light as she crossed the floor. Every eye in the chamber turned to her. The king paused, frowning in confusion. The other Veyari whispered anxiously. A princess did not interrupt the king. A princess did not step forward without permission. Kelaira ignored them all. She stopped in front of Ethan. He blinked in disbelief. His heart thudded against his ribs. He had never felt so small in his life. Aliens who had dismissed him seconds ago now stared with wide eyes. He opened his mouth to speak, but no sound came out. Kelaira raised her hand, pointing directly at him. Her voice rang clear, strong enough to silence the entire hall. He's mine. For a moment, the universe seemed to stop. The council chamber, filled with leaders from 100 worlds, fell into stunned silence. The Veyari warriors looked as if lightning had struck. The king's mouth tightened in fury. The other alien delegations whispered in shock, their voices rising like wind through the trees. A human, claimed by the Veyari princess? Impossible. Humans were considered fragile, weak, unworthy. No Veyari warrior would ever choose a human as ally, much less a royal heir. Yet here she stood, her finger steady, her words unshaken. Ethan's mind went blank. His mouth moved, but he could only manage a stammer. I think you must be mistaken. I'm just... But Kalira's expression never wavered. Her glowing eyes burned with certainty. To her people, such a declaration was not a game. It was binding, like an oath of fire. To claim someone as hers meant protection, alliance, and fate. It meant she had chosen him before all witnesses. The Veyari king stepped forward, his voice low and dangerous. Kalira, what nonsense. Is this? She did not flinch. I have spoken. I will not take back my words. He is mine. Gasps spread across the room. Some aliens chuckled, mocking the boldness. Others leaned forward, sensing drama. The insectoid ambassador clicked its mandibles excitedly. The reptilian nobles whispered about dishonor. The small furred creatures squeaked in confusion. Every species had their eyes fixed on the strange human at the center of it all. Ethan's hands trembled. He wanted to protest, to explain that he was no warrior, no leader, no legend. He was simply Ethan Cross, a junior diplomat from Earth. But his voice stuck in his throat. How could he speak when the princess of a warrior empire had just claimed him like a banner in front of the galaxy? The king's glare cut across the chamber. A human? You shame us, daughter. You insult our people. Withdraw your words. Kalira raised her chin, unshaken. Never. Ethan's thoughts raced. What have I gotten myself into? Why me? Why would she? His pulse hammered in his ears. The council's attention pressed down on him like a mountain. He felt as though he had been dragged onto a stage he never asked to stand on. The silence broke as the council chamber erupted into argument. Some shouted that it was a joke, others that it was scandal, others that perhaps humanity had some hidden worth. The noise filled the chamber, echoing against the glowing walls. Ethan stood frozen in the storm. His life changed in a single moment. And deep inside, beneath the fear and confusion, a strange thought flickered. The council chamber was still in chaos. Voices clashed like waves against stone, each one louder than the last. Alien diplomats argued, shouted, and whispered all at once. The claim of Princess Kalira had set the hall on fire. A human, an earthborn nobody, was the center of attention for the first time in galactic history. Ethan Cross stood frozen, caught between disbelief and terror. His mouth was dry, his legs stiff. He wanted to vanish, to melt into the glowing floor, to escape the sharp eyes burning into him from every corner. He had not come to be a hero. He had not come to be anyone's chosen one. He had come to observe, nothing more. But Kalira stood tall at his side, calm as a mountain in the storm. Her silver-toned skin caught the council's light, and her glowing blue eyes never wavered. Her words had been spoken, and she would not take them back. The king of the Veyari, Kalira's father, lifted his hand. The hall slowly fell silent, though the air still buzzed with tension. His voice rolled like thunder. Kalira, he said, each syllable heavy with anger, you will explain yourself. Now. Kalira turned to face him. She did not bow. She did not lower her gaze. Her voice was steady, carrying through the chamber without hesitation. I have seen what others cannot. This human has something rare, something none of our warriors hold. A strength that is not of muscle, nor of blade, but of spirit. That is why I claimed him. The Veyari warriors stirred uneasily, To them, strength was measured in combat, in scars, in victories won by blood. The idea that a soft, fragile human could hold a greater strength was laughable. The king narrowed his eyes. You disgrace our traditions. The Veyari do not honor weakness. You would bind yourself to a species still crawling out of its cradle? Murmurs of agreement rippled through the Veyari delegation. Ethan felt heat rise in his chest. Anger this time, not fear. He clenched his fists, though he still said nothing. Kalira's voice cut the whispers. I speak what I see. He has something your warriors lack. He may look weak, but he will not break. He has the fire of resilience, and that is the strength I choose. The council erupted again. Some laughed openly, mocking the boldness of her words. Others leaned forward with interest, sensing something important beneath the chaos. A few ambassadors whispered to one another, already considering what this meant for humanity's place in the stars. Ethan's mind spun. Resilience? Fire of spirit? He hardly felt like he had either right now. He felt like a man shoved into a storm without shelter. Yet strangely, her words stirred something in him. For the first time since arriving, he did not feel invisible. The Veyari king slammed his fist against his chest plate, the sound echoing like a hammer strike. If you will not take back your words, then tradition will judge them. He turned his burning eyes toward Ethan. Human. The dawn on Veyari Prime was unlike any dawn Ethan Cross had ever seen. The sky was not blue, but a vast ocean of silver light. Twin suns rose together, one pale and one golden, painting the land in sharp contrasts of fire and shadow. The air was thin, sharp, and cold, carrying with it the weight of a planet shaped by war and tradition. Ethan stood at the edge of a massive stone arena, his heart thudding like a drum in his chest. Around him, rows of tiered seats stretched upward, packed with thousands of Veyari citizens. Their armor gleamed in the sunlight, their voices rumbled like thunder, and their glowing eyes all locked on him. He had never felt smaller in his life. A Veyari elder stepped forward, his scarred face unreadable. He raised a hand and the crowd fell into silence. His voice rang out hard and final. Today the human faces the trials of worth. He has been claimed by Princess Kalira. By tradition, he must prove himself or be cast aside. The first trial begins now. The trial of strength. The crowd erupted in cheers. Ethan's stomach sank. Strength? Out of all the things, it had to be strength. He was not weak for a human, but compared to the towering Veyari warriors, he was nothing. They stood over 7 feet tall, their muscles thick as iron cords, their bodies built for combat. He felt like a twig in a forest of giants. A gate at the far end of the arena rumbled open. From the shadows emerged a Veyari warrior clad in heavy training armor. His name was announced as Vorak, a seasoned fighter and cousin to Kalira. His steps shook the ground as he entered, and his glare locked on Ethan with burning hatred. The crowd roared, chanting his name. Ethan felt sweat drip down his neck. Vorak raised his weapon, a heavy staff tipped with blades. He spun it once with terrifying ease before pointing it directly at Ethan. You don't belong here, human. I'll end this farce quickly. Ethan's hands trembled. He carried no weapon, only his wits. He could not fight Vorak with strength. If he tried, he would lose in seconds. The elder raised his arm. Begin, Vorak charged. The ground shook with each of his steps. The staff cut the air with deadly precision, swinging down toward Ethan's head. At the last moment, Ethan threw himself to the side, rolling across the rough stone floor. The blade slammed into the ground where he had stood, leaving a deep crack. The crowd laughed and jeered. To them, Ethan's dodge looked like cowardice, but Ethan knew better. He could not meet strength with strength. He had to survive with speed and wit. Vorak swung again, wide and powerful. Ethan ducked under the strike, stumbling, but keeping his balance. He grabbed a handful of sand from the ground and threw it at Vorak's glowing eyes. The warrior snarled, blinking furiously. The crowd gasped at the dishonorable tactic, but Ethan did not care. He was not here to impress them with honor. He was here to survive. Vorak roared and swung blindly, but his movements lost precision. Ethan darted around him, staying just out of reach. He spotted a loose piece of stone at the edge of the arena floor. Quickly, he kicked it under Vorak's foot. The massive warrior stumbled, his own weight betraying him. In that moment, Ethan leapt forward, grabbing the end of the staff with both hands. He yanked hard, twisting with all his strength. Vorak, unprepared for the sudden shift, lost his grip. The weapon clattered to the ground. The crowd erupted in shocked cries. Vorak's eyes burned with rage. Weaponless, he lunged at Ethan barehanded. Ethan's heart raced. He knew one wrong move and he would be crushed. He backed away, grabbed the staff, and raised it awkwardly. It was far too heavy for him to wield properly, but he didn't need skill. He only needed timing. As Vorak charged again, Ethan spun the staff low, sweeping at his legs. The blow lacked power, but with Vorak already off balance, it was enough. The massive warrior toppled, crashing into the dust with a thunderous roar. The arena went silent for a heartbeat, then voices exploded in a storm of disbelief. A human, small, fragile, untrained, had brought down a Veyari warrior. The elder raised his arm. The first trial is complete. The human survives. Kaelira, watching from her place among the royals, allowed herself the faintest smile. Her eyes met Ethan's across the arena, and for the first time he felt pride stir within him. He had not won with strength, but with resilience and cleverness. And it had been enough. The second trial came. Swiftly, Ethan was given no time to rest as the elder announced, "Now begins the trial of cunning." The arena shifted. Walls rose from the ground, forming a twisting labyrinth. The crowd cheered as traps were revealed. Hidden pits, swinging blades, and puzzles of ancient design. The challenge was simple. Reach the center of the maze before the sands of time ran out. Failure meant death by collapse. Ethan's heart pounded as he stepped into the maze. The walls towered above him, smooth and impossible to climb. He moved cautiously, testing each step. The Veyari designed these trials for warriors with sharp instincts and perfect memory. Ethan had neither, but he had something else. Adaptability. The first trap triggered when he stepped on a stone tile that shifted under his weight. A row of spears shot from the wall. Ethan threw himself backward just in time, the point slicing the air inches from his face. His lungs burned, but he forced himself to think. Don't just move, observe. He slowed down, studying the patterns. Soon he noticed faint scratches on the floor tiles, marks left by past challengers. He followed the safer paths, learning as he went. When he encountered a dead end, he broke a small piece of his jacket and tied it to the corner as a marker, ensuring he would not circle endlessly. The maze tested more than memory, it tested nerve. In one chamber, a puzzle of shifting stones blocked the path. Ethan, sweating, studied it. He recalled Earth games of sliding tiles, childhood puzzles meant to teach patience. Piece by piece, he solved it, forcing the stones into alignment. The wall slid open. The crowd, watching from above through the transparent ceilings, murmured in surprise. Few challengers took the time to solve the puzzle with such patience. Most tried to smash through and failed. Time was running short. Ethan sprinted through the final corridors, lungs burning, legs aching. He burst into the center chamber just as the final grains of sand fell in the giant hourglass above. The elder's voice rang out. The second trial is complete. The human survives again. Cheers mixed with disbelief. Some of the crowd began to murmur with respect. Perhaps the human was not as weak as they thought, but the third trial was the hardest. The trial of endurance begins, the elder declared. Ethan was led to a platform high above the arena. Below stretched a pit filled with shifting sands and heat that shimmered like fire. From hidden gates, monstrous beasts emerged, scaled creatures with long claws and snapping jaws. They prowled the pit, eyes glowing red. The challenge was simple: endure until the sun set. No weapon, no escape, just survival. The gate opened, and Ethan was pushed inside. The heat struck him immediately, sucking the breath from his lungs. The Creatures circled, growling low. Sweat poured down his face, stinging his eyes. His body screamed for rest, but his mind refused. Stay alive. Just stay alive. The first beast lunged. Ethan scrambled up a jagged rock, using it as high ground. He hurled loose stones at its eyes, forcing it back. Another creature tried to climb after him, but he kicked at its snout until it dropped away. Hours dragged on. His arms ached, his throat burned with thirst, and his legs shook. But every time he thought he could not go on, he remembered Kalira's words. Fear is the beginning of courage. The crowd roared as the beasts circled him endlessly. Some expected him to collapse, but Ethan refused. He adapted, using the terrain, dodging at the last moment and setting beasts against each other by baiting them into fighting. At last, as the suns dipped toward the horizon, a horn sounded. The beasts retreated into their gates. The pit fell silent. Ethan collapsed to his knees, chest heaving, body drenched in sweat. But he was alive. The elder raised his arms to the crowd. The third trial is complete. The human endures. The Bosch arena thundered with shouts. Some cried in disbelief, others in fury, but many now roared with respect. Kalira stood, her voice carrying clear above the chaos. He has proven himself. Let all here witness. Ethan Cross is mine. Ethan, exhausted, but alive, lifted his head. For the first time he saw awe, not mockery, in the eyes of the galaxy. The roar of the crowd still echoed in Ethan's ears long after the trials ended. He sat in the quiet of the guest chamber, body aching from bruises and exhaustion. Every muscle screamed for rest, yet his mind refused to sleep. He had survived. Against all odds, against the laughter and disbelief of the galaxy, he had endured the trials of the Veyari. Strength, cunning, endurance. Each one had nearly broken him, but he had held on. Still, the memory of the beasts, the endless maze, and Vorak's hateful glare pressed heavy on his thoughts. Vorak. Even during the trials, Ethan had felt the cousin's fury burning like fire. Vorak had expected him to fail, expected to humiliate him in front of the galaxy. But Ethan had won, and in doing so he had embarrassed a proud warrior who had never known defeat. Ethan knew that would not be forgotten. That evening the council gathered again, this time for a feast in honor of the trials. The great hall glowed, with golden light, filled with long tables of food from across the stars. Creatures with shimmering scales, fruits that glowed faintly, and spiced meats that steamed with heat filled the air with strange scents. Ethan sat near Kalira, still sore, still unsure. He noticed the way others looked at him different. The arena shook with the sound of the crowd. The trial of blood had begun, and Ethan stood alone with nothing but a wooden staff against Vorak's blade. The warrior's armor gleamed under the suns, his muscles flexing with every step. He moved, like a predator, confident, deadly. Ethan's heart thundered in his chest, but he tightened his grip on the staff. He knew if he fought Vorak on strength alone, he would not last more than a breath. Vorak lunged, his massive sword slicing through the air. Ethan barely dodged, the blade crashing into the ground where he had stood. Dust flew into the air. The crowd roared. Ethan stumbled back, gasping for air. He circled, eyes sharp. Vorak was fast, but also arrogant. He wanted to end this with power, to crush Ethan quickly. That arrogance might be the only weakness Ethan could use. The second strike came faster. Ethan ducked, rolling aside as the sword smashed into the arena floor again. Sparks flew. "Stand and fight, human!" Vorak roared, his voice echoing across the walls. "I am fighting," Ethan shouted back, panting, "just not stupidly." Some in the crowd laughed. Others growled in anger. Ethan waited until Vorak swung again, then jabbed his staff at the warrior's leg. The blow wasn't powerful, but it made Vorak stumble. Ethan darted away, keeping distance. He knew he couldn't wound Vorak with strength, but he could frustrate him, tire him, and make him reckless. The duel went on. Ethan dodged, ducked, and jabbed when he could. Each movement left him more exhausted, sweat soaking his shirt, lungs burning. But he saw the change in Vorak. The warrior's roars grew louder, his swings wilder. His pride was cracking. Finally, Vorak charged with blind rage. Ethan sidestepped, slamming his staff against the back of Vorak's knee. The warrior collapsed to one side. The crowd gasped. Ethan lifted the staff, pressing it to Vorak's throat while the warrior lay stunned. His chest heaved, his arms trembled, but he stood firm. The arena fell silent. The elder's voice rang out. The duel is ended. The human has claimed victory. Cheers and shouts shook the air. Some voices celebrated, others cursed, but none could deny what they had seen. Vorak's pride had been shattered. Ethan had not only survived, but won. Later, Ethan sat in his chamber, too drained to move. His body ached, his knuckles raw, his breath still uneven. Kalira entered quietly. Her golden eyes glowed with something softer than before, pride. You did what none thought possible. Ethan gave a weak smile. I almost didn't, if he had landed just one swing. But he didn't, Kalira said firmly. You showed them all that strength is not only muscle and steel, it is mind, it is will. Ethan let his head fall back against the wall. I don't know how much more proving I can do. I'm not built for this. Her gaze softened. And yet you keep surviving. That is why they will follow you. Ethan frowned. Follow me? Kalira looked toward the window where the stars glimmered against the dark. Because a greater trial is coming, one not of our making. The warning came the next morning. Scouts arrived at the palace, battered and burned. They fell to their knees before the king. The Dravari fleets, one gasped. They have crossed the borders. Thousands of ships. They are coming. The hall erupted in alarm. The Dravari, ancient enemies of the Veari, were a ruthless empire that consumed world after world. Their war machines were unmatched, their hunger endless. The king's voice boomed through the chamber. Summon the armies. Prepare the defenses. War has come to our gates. Ethan stood among the crowd, shock gripping him. He had only just survived one trial, one duel, and now an entire war was about to begin. Kalira's voice was grim. This is no trial, Ethan. This is survival for all of us. Within hours, the palace became a fortress of activity. Soldiers rushed through, the hall's armor clashing. Starships lifted into the skies, their engines shaking the ground. War banners hung heavy, glowing with the sigils of the Veari. Ethan followed Kalira to the War Council chamber. There, generals pointed at star maps projected above the table, lines of red marking the enemy's advance. The Dravari outnumber us 3-1, a commander growled. They will burn through our outer defenses and reach the capital within days. Another spoke. We cannot face them in open battle. We must hold the palace world and hope reinforcements from our allies arrive. Ethan studied the maps, his mind racing. The generals were fierce, but their thinking was rigid, predictable. He saw openings they didn't. He stepped forward. If you fight them head-on, you'll lose. But if you use the terrain, force them into narrow routes, you can cut their numbers down. The generals glared at him, anger flashing in their eyes. You dare advise us on war, human? You know nothing of our ways. Kalira spoke before Ethan could answer. He is not bound by our ways. That is why you should listen. His perspective is different. The room went quiet. The king's gaze fell on Ethan. Speak, human. What do you see? Ethan took a breath, pointing to the map. Here, this system has asteroid fields. If you position ships inside, hidden, you can ambush their fleet. Strike fast, vanish, strike again. Don't fight them where they expect. Fight them where they are blind, the room murmured. Some dismissed it, but others considered. Finally, the king nodded. We will test this strategy. If it fails, we lose nothing more than we already risk. If it succeeds, we gain time. Ethan felt the weight of 1,000 eyes again. This time, they did not look at him with mockery, but with something else. Curiosity. The first battle came sooner than expected. From the palace walls, Ethan watched the night sky erupt with fire. Dravari warships, black and jagged like blades, descended upon the system. Veari vessels rose to meet them, their silver hulls gleaming. The two forces clashed in a storm of light. Explosions lit the heavens, ships spiraled into fire, and the roar of battle thundered through the skies. Ethan stood frozen, overwhelmed by the scale. He had fought beasts, endured trials, even survived a duel. But this was war on a level beyond imagination. Kalira stood beside him, her hand resting on the hilt of her blade. This is what we face, not just for honor, not just for pride, for survival. Ethan swallowed hard. And what do you expect me to do? She looked at him, her voice steady. What you always do. Endure. Think. And show them that a human can turn even the tide of war. The battle dragged on through the night. The Veari ships followed Ethan's plan, luring the Dravari into the asteroid fields. Hidden batteries fired from the rocks, tearing through the enemy ranks. For the first time in centuries, the Dravari advance slowed. The palace erupted with cheers. But Ethan felt no relief. He knew this was only the beginning. The Dravari were relentless. They would not stop until the galaxy burned. As dawn broke, Kalira approached him again. Her voice was low, but filled with determination. You have proven yourself again and again. Now, Ethan, you must prove something greater. He met her gaze, weary, but resolute. And what's that? Her eyes shone like molten gold. That humanity is not weak. That in this war you will be more than a survivor. You will be a leader. Ethan stood silently, the weight of her words pressing on him. He had never seen himself as more than ordinary. But now, the fate of not only himself, but of Kalira, her people, and perhaps even the galaxy, was being placed in his hands. For the first time, he didn't laugh at the idea. For the first time, he believed it might be true. The stars burned with fire. For weeks, the Veari fleets had battled the endless tide of Dravari warships. Each day was a struggle, each night filled with the sounds of alarms and the cries of the wounded. Ethan had watched worlds burn from afar, felt the ground shake as enemy bombardments struck, and seen soldiers fall one after another. And yet, the Veari still stood. They stood because of something unexpected, because of a human who refused to break. Ethan leaned over the tactical display in the War Council chamber. His eyes traced the glowing lines of enemy movements. Red markers filled the projection, swallowing system after system. Blue markers, the Veari defenses, were few and scattered. They're pushing us back again, Kalira said, her voice low but steady. She wore armor now, dark silver with golden etchings, the mark of a commander. Ethan rubbed his forehead. They're not just pushing. They're hurting you. Look, every move forces your fleet toward this system. He pointed to the center. Of the map, a small planet glowing faintly. The generals frowned. One scoffed. That world is nothing, a barren rock. Exactly, Ethan replied. Which means it's perfect for a trap. They're forcing you into one. The king leaned forward, his heavy crown casting shadows across his stern face. Then what is your answer, human? Ethan hesitated. He had never been a soldier, never been a leader. But over these battles, the Veari had started to listen when he spoke. His ideas, strange to them, had saved thousands. He took a deep breath. We don't walk into their trap. We set our own. Hours later, the Veari fleet gathered at the barren world. Hidden among the asteroids and craters, they waited in silence. Ethan stood aboard the command ship, staring at the stars beyond. The viewport. His chest was tight, his hands trembling. This was not just another skirmish, this was it. If they failed here, the Dravari would reach the palace world, and nothing would stop them from burning everything. Kalira stood beside him, her presence a steady flame. You doubt yourself again? She said softly. Ethan forced a laugh. You can tell? She gave him a look, one part sharp and one part kind. You carry fear as all do. But unlike others, you carry it, and keep walking. That is why I chose you. Her words settled into,